Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Digital Life, a podcast series by IEEE Signal Processing Society. Founded as IEEE Sparse Society in 1948, the Signal Processing Society is the world's premier association for signal processing engineers and industry professionals. In this series, we'll have candid discussions about developments in various areas of signal processing, which are the underlying ubiquitous technologies for today's modern society. In today's episode, the first of this series, we'll be having discussions on various advancements of AI in the field of medical imaging. Our guest for this episode is Professor April Kademi, and a special guest co-host, Professor Arvind Shetty.
Today, we're going to be discussing how we utilize signal processing and medical imaging in healthcare. So, first of all, it's my great honor to introduce April Kademi, a professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University here in Toronto, Canada. Instead of kind of reading April's bio, I'm going to ask her to introduce herself because she has a very interesting path to her current career. So, April.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Irvin, for having me today. Excited to be here. My name is April Kademi. I'm an associate professor of biomedical, computer, and electrical engineering at Toronto Metropolitan University. I'm also CRC, a Canada Research Chair in AI for medical imaging. I do have maybe a little bit less of a traditional path back to academia or becoming a professor, in that after my PhD, I went to industry for a number of years. And during that time, I designed, developed, and looked at how we can deploy AI for medical imaging, in particular pathology imaging. This really allowed me to become the researcher that I am, and always has the engineering and the industrial lens on what we do in the lab. So been at Toronto Metropolitan for a couple of years, and I'm excited to discuss further.
Awesome. Well, thanks, April. That's why I wanted you to say it in your own words, because your career is not a traditional one. So it's kind of just to demonstrate to younger colleagues that you don't always have to take a straightforward path to where you want to end up. And April is quite successful, I have to say, in what she does here in Toronto. So
thanks, Irvin.
Let me ask you kind of, something with your extensive background. How do you see, how's the signal processing technology advanced the field of medical imaging? What was the main kind of thing for you that you realized throughout your work?
Yeah, so signal processing can touch on various aspects of medical imaging. For example, image reconstruction, so the actual image acquisition side, as well as post-analytics such as reporting, now really with the advancement of LLM technology. But my research focuses on the application of signal processing methodologies in the analytic phase where the images have already been acquired. So we design, develop, and deploy AI tools to automatically analyze medical images to provide quantitative metrics of disease for workflow augmentation. The measures of disease can be used to improve, for example, diagnostic accuracy, and can be used to also assign therapies more robustly, which leads to improved quality of care. So over the last several years, signal and image processing have come a long way in the field of medical image analysis. In the past, we used classical image processing and traditional machine learning algorithms. Our data sets were really small. I recall for my PhD research that I had 25 patients.
And that was a big one, right?
Exactly. So that was considered big at the time. So if you contrast that to what we have today, where we have now access to state-of-the-art deep learning algorithms that are solving problems that I've worked on for the last decade, and we are applying them on extremely large data sets, such as one of our neuroimaging data sets, which has more than 500,000 images from multiple centers worldwide. Where we are with this is that the algorithms are advanced, we can apply them widely, and now we can start to automatically segment objects of interest, such as, for example, tumors, and we can classify disease now on large cohorts. And this provides clinicians with automated imaging biomarkers to diagnose, monitor progression, and for choosing therapy.
But it's kind of interesting. You mentioned the fact that you had the big data set of 25 patients. And I mean, you did a PhD relatively recently, and it's not that you were doing it 50 years ago, right?
No.
Yours was in last decade or so. And now you're talking about 500,000 patients across the globe that you're able to actually do it in your own lab. It's not that you have a super clusters hanging around your research lab. Like, it's really every day is more or less computational resources. What do you see as the latest innovations in this medical imaging technologies like MRI, CT, ultrasound?
Yeah, so I think really the major breakthroughs and, innovations from a technological perspective in medical imaging is definitely around AI applied to medical imaging. There are many innovations on the analysis side of things. So there's new foundation models that let us detect and segment objects with high accuracy. So we can use these foundation models as kind of a parameter initialization to fine tune to our own data sets, which is sometimes challenging medical imaging because we don't have a lot of labeled data. And there's a lot of hurdles and barriers to accessing medical data. So, to have these foundation models as kind of a parameter initialization for some of the smaller data sets, which are common in medical imaging, is really a great help. On the other side of things, there are a lot of FDA-approved algorithms in the acquisition space. So, for example, you can acquire images with lower dose or faster with lower SNR, et cetera. And then you can use things like super resolution algorithms to automatically upsample or improve the quality of the images. This has a huge return in investment for businesses because you can then make the business case to the organizations that you're selling your algorithms to that if you use my tools, you're going to get a 25% efficiency gain. So you can scan 25% more patients. And usually this translates directly to being able to charge for more patients. And then that can justify the cost in investing in the algorithms. So a lot of the hardware vendors have focused on this problem in particular because the ROI is so clear.
Yeah, and you were mentioning improving the kind of whether hospitals or institutions can charge more, but you're also trying to improve diagnostic accuracy and patient outcomes, right?
Yes.
Where do you see, how do these technologies improve actually, not just diagnostic, but outcomes, long-term outcomes?
Yeah, so AI has the potential to improve diagnostic accuracy, turnaround times, and these both improve quality of care because if you have higher accuracy and you do it faster, it all automatically kind of translates into better patient outcomes. But just as importantly, AI holds the possibility of improving inter-rater agreement across clinicians. This is super critical. If a clinician reads the images, they might find a different result as, let's say, one of their colleagues, even down the hall. And this is because some of the scoring, the grading, the interpretation is subjective. And so this can even be more true with community hospitals that, for example, don't have specialized expertise. So in Toronto, we're fortunate that we have academic centers where we have particular expertise like breast pathologists, renal pathologists. But in community hospitals, you might have general pathologists, and they would also look at the renal and breast tissue. So the experience matters. And as a result, the patient can receive different or even incorrect treatment regimes depending on the person who's interpreting the images. So using AI instead can lead to more robust measures of disease that can result in the same answer every single time, independent of the rater reading the images. We recently found this actually in a study that we conducted with 90 pathologists, international pathologists, where we gave them access to one of our AI tools for breast cancer imaging. And what we found was that not only that it made them faster and more accurate, but it also made them agree more with their colleagues, which was not only a very important finding in itself, but we also found that it was regardless of the experience level of the person interpreting the images. So residents were having the same accuracy and agreeing with their practicing pathologist colleagues. So this means you're kind of standardizing or normalizing the way the images are interpreted. And especially in pathology, it's a definitive diagnosis that determines treatment. And so if you're getting the same answer every single time, that patient is going to be assigned the right therapy at the right time. So it really has a chance to kind of standardize therapeutic decisions, which obviously leads to better patient outcomes.
This study of 90 pathologists, that's quite interesting. I mean, that's a real world example of how we utilize these things. So I've got a couple of questions here because I'm quite interested to hear. How did actually AI help increase this accuracy or inter-rater kind of how reliable these multiple physicians are or clinicians are? Can you elaborate a bit more on that? Because it's quite kind of interesting. Like it's one of those side effects that you really don't expect here, right?
That's right. So basically, we let them score the image without AI, and then we let them score the image sometime later with AI. And we basically compared how accurate they were without the AI and with AI. And then we looked at basically the correlation of the scores across all the pathologists. And so this was actually like one of the key findings I feel in the study that we published, because a lot of times we're focusing heavily on this turnaround time piece, which a lot of the industrial community is focused on because the ROI is so clear. You can make a clear business case to say your organization will be 25% faster. And that usually can translate into a monetary amount. But with things like improving quality of care, it's a lot more difficult to actually quantify this effect, right? So what we were trying to do is basically take the step before looking at patient outcomes, right? So we wanted to know how the decision-making process of the pathologists are in light of using the AI. And so if we can standardize their scoring, then we can basically assign the same therapeutic intervention across all the raters that could possibly see this image. And this is really huge and was one of the main findings of the study is that you should have seen the variability without AI. They did not agree with each other.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
Yes. And residents, for example, didn't agree with each other, didn't agree with the practicing pathologists. Whereas, once we used the tool, everybody's accuracy and scores became on the same level. So this really has a chance to standardize care.
I mean, because that's bringing even everybody's expertise to the same level. So you might ensure that actually the outcomes are sustainable or realistic across different level of expertise of a innovation.
Yes. And the thing that's kind of interesting is also that we're automating some of these tedious tasks, right? That a human shouldn't maybe be doing, like counting thousands of cells or estimating the size of a tumor in terms of the volume. I mean, this is not an easy task without doing it automatically. So we have a chance to automate some of these laborious kind of subjective tasks to let the pathologists and radiologists focus on other things like assigning therapy and patient management.
Actually seeing patients, right?
Yes, exactly. Keeping the patient center.
You brought that example. Can you name another example where this is really like these advances now in the signal processing and medical imaging processing through either traditional means or AI, real world cases that really kind of surprised you as a researcher that you can actually change some of these things significantly? I mean, the example you just had was a really good one because rating images is tedious, from a labor point of view, but also from an accuracy point of view. But what are other examples can you think of?
So the FDA has hundreds of approved radiology image algorithms and only a few for pathology imaging. A lot of them radiology algorithms are on the image acquisition side, improving image quality and so on. And as I discussed previously, a lot of the hardware companies have focused on that because there's a clear return on an investment. For the automated image analysis tools, I would say that there's kind of a few big buckets, but one of them is automated triaging. And this is because it's a little bit low-hanging fruit in the sense that it would clearly offer efficiency gains, which provides a lucrative business case for purchasing the algorithms. And what I mean by automated triage is you have an algorithm kind of read your images and then sort them and then triage the ones that they think the clinician should either see or see first. So, for example, in the case, there's been a few algorithms FDA approved for intracranial hemorrhage detection. And what these algorithms do is, because when a patient is admitted to the ER, if they have an intracranial hemorrhage, they should be seen right away. And so these algorithms go through any of the intracranial hemorrhage CT images, and they flag them and say, this is a possible candidate for intracranial hemorrhage, and puts it at the top of the workflow for the radiologist. So that way they're able to see it right away and treat it. And this actually has been shown to actually speed up time to treatment quite significantly. We're still working on some of the ways that we can use some of these quantitative tools to actually complement the work that the pathologists and radiologists do. So, for example, the study that we published with the 90 pathologists, it's one of the first of its kind and of that scale. So, we're still learning about how these tools are going to interact with the pathologist. Do they trust them? And if they trust them, does that change the way they interact with the tools? So we're getting close with it, but there's still more work to be done.
So you named this as one of the challenges whether the clinicians trust the tool, right? Because there are not just ethical issues, there are also legal issues, especially here in North America, right? So from a kind of a technological point of view, what do you see as key challenges in developing and further implementing these signal and image processing techniques in special medical imaging?
Yes, this is a deep question, a big question, because there are too many, which might be a good thing because I'll likely not be out of a job anytime soon. Okay.
For a very long time, eh?
I think every day that's what we do is we're identifying new problems that we can solve. But it mainly stems from the fact that working with real clinical data is hard. The data is super messy. There's lots of variability, not only due to different scanner systems, but also just due to patient heterogeneity, disease heterogeneity. So all of these kind of multiple variables are hard to model and account for. When deep learning came to medical imaging, we were all very happy and it solved many problems for us. Like, we're segmenting objects with great accuracy. And I've been working on these problems for about a decade. But while it has done this, there's still more work to be done. For maximal safety of the patient, we need to study and improve the errors of concerns that these algorithms have. That means analyzing the failure modes of the algorithms. So not just what is the average performance, but where does it fail and when? And also, there's additional barriers that come in the way of the design, and they're specific to medical imaging. For example, limited labels. So generating ground truth annotations for segmentation, or just overall generating labels requires specific expertise. So like some of the natural images, you could have most humans provide labels for that. But for medical images, you need specialized people. And usually clinicians are quite busy, have limited time to devote to research. So sitting there doing annotations for days in and days out is not practical. So that's one barrier, limited labels. Another is data variability due to, as I said, differences across data. We're really starting to study this in the lab to understand how data variability affects the performance of AI tools in medical imaging.
Specifically, are you talking about difference in scanners or?
Difference in scanners, difference across patients, differences across diseases. How does this affect the imaging data, and how does this create performance differences in algorithms? For wide-scale adoption, you really need to study this. You need to study the way the algorithms work in multi-center data sets. That's what my team have particular expertise in, is to try and understand how algorithms behave in wide-scale deployment scenarios.
So I'm going to be kind of ask you for a little top secret. So do we really see differences? Let's say if two different institutions utilize the same scanner and same protocol. Do you really see the differences even in such a cases, or they're not there?
Yes, there is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So like we can anticipate even within the what we would call control settings at two different institutions that you'll still see the differences.
Mm-hmm.
And those differences are coming from like the just technicians' expertise or?
Just the overall acquisition technologies. Some imaging is not standardized. CT has Huntsville units, so relatively standardized, but other modalities don't have a standardized scale. So across scanners, this is exacerbated further. And a lot of it is also, you don't know what acquisition is happening under the hood. So something to consider. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So have you seen a significant drop? Let's say you trained on one data set with one particular scanner, and then you try to classify a different data set that was used on a different scanner, and your accuracy significantly drops.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So, and we're talking about like big differences or like 10%, 15%?
Depends on the problem, but it varies.
So it can be a huge change. That's interesting. And is it just like in specific modalities, or even when you see in like across fields, maybe pathology versus radiology?
Oh yeah, all fields.
All fields, so it's a big problem. So kind of where do you envision the future of medical imaging with these continuing advances in signal processing and, image processing? In general, data science, let's call it.
Well, I'm super excited about this technology and these tools because it has the potential to change the way medicine is practiced. I like to think of AI tools for medical imaging as a software-based toolbox that arms the clinicians with objective measurements of disease that they need for patient management. So you can think of lavish reports pre-filled with metrics of disease, with visual imaging, visual images of the segmentation and what was detected, and quantitative metrics that allows for robust patient monitoring. I think that these tools will become one of the many technological innovations that physicians depend on for diagnosis and treatment planning. And, I'm pretty excited about the enthusiasm and support from the medical community. When I started in this space, I worked for a doctor's office. I was in university, and I remember telling the physician that, oh my goodness, I'm going to do my master's and PhD in medical imaging analysis. And I told him, we're going to design tools to automatically analyze images. And I remember him saying to me that nobody's going to use that. And I was so devastated. And I was questioning my career path because, these are the end users. But since that time, there has been a huge shift in perception and cooperation within the community. Clinicians are excited by this technology and see the potential for automating some of these tasks that they find laborious and subjective. I really think the sentiment has shifted, and that has been one of the paramount foundations or changes in what we do, because now the teams are multidisciplinary, and so you can understand clinician pain points all the way to how are you going to implement this practically, talking to hospital system administrators and so on. So I believe we're around the corner from these being used readily in clinical settings, but we have more work to do. And I look forward to doing that work.
I mean, it's interesting. You brought up an interesting point that a medical doctor, not that long ago told you nobody's going to use this. And now probably you have a bunch of clinicians knocking on your door on a daily basis saying, can you develop this for us? Just kind of to capture all of this, what was the turning point for clinicians from your point of view?
I honestly believe that it was when Watson AI beat the leading champion in Jeopardy. Everybody was so excited about that potential. And, everybody started to realize that, okay, maybe these algorithms are better than humans and can do what humans do.
Yeah, especially repetitive tasks, right?
Yes. And it was that moment in time that I feel like not only, domain people, like, so in my case, clinicians, but also just general society, its perception shifted and people were interested in it. And this has led to a big boom. And then it was followed by, AI being open sourced and being available through libraries and model weights and etc. in the open source community. There was excitement, then there was a whole bunch of tools available that we could actually start to rapidly advance various disciplines. So once we started to see the wins and the gains, then the excitement was further enhanced.
You have an interesting career path. You're now in academia, you were in industry before that. And there's always kind of a fight between academia and industry, who's doing more advanced work, right? When it comes to medical imaging, having seen both sides, who is more, I don't want to say advanced, but who is leading the race here now?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Industry picks problems that are going to make them money quickly. So it's not necessarily the hardest problem to work on, I would say. That being said, on the fundamental computer science and AI, there's a lot of research being done. As you know, in Toronto, we have the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence, and lots of innovations in terms of the actual architectures. So types of architectures, foundation models, federated learning. And what we really need to start doing is bridging the gap between research and industry. So industry is picking on easy problems to solve because it's expensive to hire an R&D team. Clinical trials are expensive, so you have to pick a problem that is going to make you money. So they don't do as much blue sky research, I feel, in this field. It's more of a product development task. Whereas in research, we're doing things that are interesting and have potential application in many years. And so we have to start to bridge that gap. We have to start to see what the missing links are between taking these fundamental tools and applying them to a domain so complex, such as medical imaging. And I think that, with the industry experience, that really has actually given me a different lens because I understand, product development, product management, what it takes to make a great product. And then being in the academia side of things, I can be on the leading edge of state-of-the-art developments. So I can, see the both worlds and start to say, how can I take this and apply it to industry, basically, industry problems.
Kind of to wrap up the podcast today, I have a few more questions that are more philosophical questions for you. What kind of an advice would you give to new and upcoming engineers and young scientists looking to expand into this area?
Some of the advice I would give definitely is pursue something that you're passionate about. Make sure that you're passionate about this field because engineering is not easy. And, if you love what you do, even in the face of challenges, you wake up every day with a new spring in your step. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is make sure, in addition to developing your expertise, right? So when you come to the table, the minimum requirement is to be a solid engineer, right? Know your craft, speak the language. You should learn everything about your subject matter, right? But that's, I would say, the minimum requirement of being a great engineer. You should also focus on your communication skills. If you build technologies and tools that just sit on a shelf and you can't tell anybody about it, it dies there. Nobody is going to use it. Nobody is going to care about it. So developing good communication skills is paramount. Another aspect is other soft skills, networking, presentation skills. So, you want to be the well-rounded engineer that is solid from the technical front, who can tell a great story and talk about their craft and themselves. And also you have experience working in teams and managing people, and, you're able to put yourself out there to explore new opportunities. In fact, most of the funding agencies or big scholarships, minimum requirement to come to the table is technical expertise, research excellence. But the icing on the cake are these soft skills, volunteerism. So get involved with places like IEEE in your local area, and they offer great programs for young professionals, students, networking opportunities. So be that well-rounded engineer.
And I'm going to ask you the last question for today. If you could use one word to summarize the future of signal processing data science in medical imaging field, what that word would be?
Exciting.
Exciting. Awesome. So thank you so much, April. This was Professor April Kadami from Toronto Metropolitan University in Toronto, Canada, an international expert on medical imaging and AI. And I'm proud to have her on this podcast today.
Thank you so much, Irvin. That was fun.
Have a great day, everybody.